When I first met Clara, she was charming in every way, kind, witty, and incredibly organized. She had this calm confidence about her that drew people in. For the first few months, everything between us felt perfect. We spent weekends exploring new cafes, going on long drives, and planning a future that seemed full of promise. But over time, that same organized nature began to feel less like structure and more like control. It started with small things. She wanted me to text her every time I reached somewhere. Then, she began reminding me to phrase things better when we talked. I thought it was harmless at first, maybe even caring. But soon, I started feeling like I was being graded in a relationship instead of being loved. One evening, after a minor disagreement about me forgetting to take out the trash, Clara said we needed rules to avoid misunderstandings. I laughed it off, thinking she was joking. But the next day, she showed up at my apartment holding a neatly stapled 7-page document. She called it our relationship contract. At first, I genuinely thought it was a prank. But as I flipped through the pages, my smile faded. It wasn't a love letter or a quirky couple project. It was a detailed list of my mistakes, each followed by the changes I was required to make. Clause 2, for instance, stated that I should always compliment her at least twice a day. Clause 5 said I must answer all her calls within 5 minutes. And Clause 9 forbade me from playing video games more than 1 hour a week. I stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious," I said, half laughing, half horrified. But she was dead serious. She said, "I'm tired of relationships failing because people don't have structure. This will help us grow stronger." I told her relationships weren't supposed to be legal agreements, but she insisted it was modern and practical. For a while, I tried to go along with it. I didn't want to lose her. Every time I felt suffocated, I reminded myself that love takes compromise. But slowly, it began eating away at me. I started second-guessing every word I said, every move I made. I wasn't acting naturally anymore. I was performing for approval. The worst part was the weekly review section. Every Sunday, Clara would sit me down with her notes about my behavior that week. She'd point out violations of the contract, such as failed to compliment adequately on Thursday or interrupted during discussion. I tried to talk to her about how this made me feel, but she said I was being defensive and resistant to growth. My friends noticed I was becoming quieter. When they asked if things were okay, I brushed it off, saying Clara was just organized. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. I started feeling like an employee trying not to get fired from his job, instead of a boyfriend in a loving relationship. The breaking point came one night when I got home late from work. My phone had died, and I couldn't call her. When I arrived, she was sitting on my couch, holding the contract. She looked furious. "You violated Clause 5 and Clause 12, she said coldly. "You didn't inform me about being late, and you missed your daily affirmation." I stood there speechless. It felt surreal, like I was in some twisted courtroom instead of my own home. That night, I finally spoke up. I told her I couldn't live by a list of rules just to prove my love. I said I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for how well I followed her system. She tried to argue, saying I was overreacting, but something inside me had already broken. I quietly packed a few things and left. The next morning, she sent a long message saying she couldn't believe I quit the contract. She said I lacked emotional maturity. I didn't reply. I blocked her number, deleted the shared documents, and decided to move forward with my life. It was painful, but it also felt like taking my first real breath in months. Over time, I realized how much I'd changed just to keep her happy. I had given up small parts of myself, one rule at a time. I used to laugh easily, make jokes, and enjoy life freely. Under her system, I became anxious, careful, and silent. It took me a while to find my confidence again. A few months later, I ran into her by accident at a bookstore. She seemed surprised to see me, and for a moment, her eyes softened. She said she was in therapy now and had realized that her contract idea was her way of controlling fear, not love. I nodded politely, wished her well, and walked away. Looking back, that experience taught me something valuable. Love can't be negotiated, signed, or measured in rules. Real love is messy, unpredictable, and full of forgiveness, not clauses and conditions. I learned that peace in a relationship doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. Now, whenever someone asks me what I look for in a partner, I just say this: someone who accepts my imperfections without turning them into paperwork. Because love isn't a contract, it's a choice you renew every day, willingly, not because you're bound to it.